Welcome to Fact Horizon. This is where history meets mystery and facts define the future. We explore the profound truths of human existence, the wonders of the mind, and the secrets of the cosmos, all in one place. If you seek knowledge and wonder, you're in the right spot. Subscribe now and join our journey beyond the horizon. Today, we are discussing a book that explains why self-control fails, why motivation is unreliable, and how discipline actually works. The book is titled The Power of Discipline by Daniel Walter. And this book, it addresses a critical question. Why do some people act consistently without motivation, while others fail even when they know what to do? The Power of Discipline explains that discipline is not a personality trait, but a trainable skill rooted in biology, psychology, and behavior. This is part 1. In this section, we will discuss the following chapters. Chapter 1, Self-Discipline, the Biological Argument, and Chapter 2, the benefits of self-discipline. Okay, so let's dive in. We've set the stage, but I have to admit, when I first hear the word discipline, my first reaction isn't positive.
Oh.
It just feels heavy, you know? It almost feels like an accusation, like someone's pointing a finger and saying you're not trying hard enough.
I think a lot of people feel that way. It's been framed as a moral issue for so long.
Exactly. Like, if you lack discipline, you're lazy, you have a character flaw. It feels like some people are just born with it, you know? They wake up at 5 a.m. and run a marathon before I've even hit snooze.
Right, the discipline gene.
Yeah. And the rest of us are just broken.
Well, that is the exact myth that Daniel Walter wants to just completely dismantle right from the beginning.
Okay.
And that's the whole point of Chapter 1, Self-Discipline, the Biological Argument. He says, let's stop talking about morality and start talking about biology.
So it's not a personality trait you're born with?
No. His entire argument is that it's a skill, a trainable skill.
Like learning to play the piano or something?
Precisely. You wouldn't look at a concert pianist and say they were just born that way. You know, they put in thousands of hours of practice. Discipline, he argues, is the exact same thing. It's a function of the brain's physical structure.
Okay, so if it's physical, let's talk about the hardware. The book drops this incredible number. What was it? 100 billion neurons.
Approximately, yes.
Yeah.
It's a staggering number.
It's so big, it's hard to even wrap your head around. What are all those neurons doing when I'm, say, trying to talk myself out of ordering a pizza at 10 p.m.?
They're firing in complex patterns. Think of it as a city with billions of roads. Every thought, every impulse is a car driving down one of those roads. For a long time, we could only guess what was happening. It was all philosophical.
Just people telling us to be more virtuous.
Exactly. But now, Walter points out, we have neurological evidence. We can actually look inside.
We're talking about the fMRI technology.
Yes, functional magnetic resonance imaging. It lets us see which parts of the brain are active in real time.
So what did they see? Did they actually put someone in a machine and tempt them with pizza?
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
They gave people tasks that required self-control, that required them to choose a long-term benefit over an immediate reward. And specific parts of the brain lit up brightly. The prefrontal cortex, specifically, which is right behind your forehead. Blood and oxygen rushed to that area.
So it's a real physical event.
It's a physical process. Discipline isn't some vague concept. It is your brain burning fuel to perform a function. It's a heavy lift, neurologically speaking.
So when I'm staring at that pizza menu, there is a literal biological battle happening in my head.
A very real one. And the most important thing about biological processes is that they can adapt. They can be trained.
Which is where the hope comes from.
Yes. And there's no better example of this in action than the one study everyone's heard of.
Ah, the marshmallow test.
The Stanford marshmallow experiment. It's the classic study on delayed gratification.
Right. The concept of putting off something good now for something better later. But can you walk us through the setup? Because the details are really something.
Of course. So you take a child, usually about 4 years old, and put them in a room alone. Just a table, a chair, and a treat. A marshmallow.
The forbidden fruit.
And the researcher makes them a deal. You can eat this one marshmallow right now, but if you can wait for me to come back, which will be in about 15 minutes, you'll get 2 marshmallows.
15 minutes is an eternity for a 4-year-old.
It's psychological torture, and it's the perfect test of suppressing an immediate desire. 1 marshmallow for a greater long-term reward. 2 marshmallows.
And the videos of these kids are amazing. They are not just sitting there patiently. They are struggling.
Oh, it's a full-on war. They cover their eyes, they kick the table, they sing to themselves. They're actively trying to distract themselves from the temptation. They are managing their own focus.
They're hacking their own brains, even at that age.
In a way, yes.
Yeah.
But here's where this study gets really powerful. The researchers didn't just stop there. They followed these kids for decades.
And this is the part that's a little scary, the correlation they found.
It was undeniable. The kids who were able to wait for the second marshmallow, well, they had better outcomes across the board later in life.
We're talking higher test scores, right?
Higher SAT scores, yes,
Hmm.
but also better social skills, lower levels of substance abuse, better stress responses, even lower body mass index.
Wow.
The connection between that early ability to delay gratification and later life success was incredibly strong.
But doesn't that sort of sound like it is a fixed trait? Like if you're the kid who ate the marshmallow, you're just doomed.
That's the key question, and it's a common fear.
Mm.
But Walter's interpretation is different. He says the study doesn't prove the trait is fixed. It just proves how powerful the trait is.
Ah.
The kids who waited had already, somehow, developed stronger neural pathways for self-control. But that doesn't mean the other kids couldn't build those pathways later.
So it's not destiny, it's just that some had a head start on the training.
Exactly. And you can start that training at any age.
Okay, so let's get into the training. How do we build those pathways? The book uses this great analogy that really clicked for me, the weightlifting analogy.
It's the most intuitive way to think about it. The author compares the brain, specifically the parts responsible for self-control, to a muscle.
Break that down.
Well, if you go to a gym for the first time, you can't lift the heaviest weight. It's not because you're a bad person.
Right, it's because my muscles aren't strong enough yet.
Precisely. Walter says discipline works the same way. Every time you practice a small act of self-control, choosing the salad over the fries,
Yeah.
getting up when the alarm goes off, you're doing one repetition.
A bicep curl for the brain.
You're firing that specific neural pathway. And the more you fire it, the stronger, faster, and more efficient it gets. It's pure neuroplasticity.
So the first time I say no to a donut, it feels impossible. My arm is shaking, metaphorically,
Yes.
but if I do it every day, eventually it becomes easy. Automatic.
It becomes a warm-up weight. You are physically changing your brain structure to make discipline the path of least resistance.
That is such a hopeful idea. But what specifically are we exercising? The book mentions executive functions.
Right. That sounds like a business term, but it's really the CEO of your brain. It's housed in your prefrontal cortex.
And what does it do?
The book highlights two key functions for discipline. The first is obvious. Impulse control. That's your brain's braking system.
The stop yourself from eating the donut function.
Exactly. But the second one is less obvious. Working memory.
Working memory. How does memory play into this?
It's crucial. Working memory is your brain's temporary sticky note. It's what allows you to hold a goal in your mind while you're being bombarded with distractions.
Give me an example.
You're trying to save money. That's the long-term goal. You walk past a store and see a jacket you want. That's the immediate impulse.
Right.
Your impulse control has to hit the brakes, but your working memory has to actively hold on to the thought, no, I'm saving for a down payment. If your working memory is weak or you're stressed and distracted, that goal can just fade away.
And the jacket wins.
The jacket wins. You essentially forget your goal in the moment. This is why focus is so important. You have to intentionally practice keeping that long-term goal in your working memory.
That really explains why my discipline collapses when I'm tired or multitasking. I literally can't hold the goal in my head.
Your sticky note is full.
But even the strongest person in the gym has to put the weights down eventually. Their muscles fail.
And that brings us to a really critical concept in the book. Willpower dynamics.
You mean willpower fatigue?
Exactly. This is the big one. Willpower is not an infinite well. The book is very clear that it's a finite, depletable resource.
This is the 8 p.m. phenomenon, isn't it?
Tell me about it.
You know, you're so good all day. You eat the healthy lunch, you're patient in traffic, you finish your big project at work, you're a model of self-control. And then you get home, and by 8 or 9 p.m., you're on the couch with a pint of ice cream, watching junk TV. All that discipline is just gone.
That's the classic willpower crash. The book explains that every single decision you made during the day that required self-control drained a little bit from your battery.
So by evening, the tank is empty.
The tank is empty. Your prefrontal cortex is literally fatigued. It's not a moral failure. It's a biological reality.
So if it's a finite resource, we have to protect it, like a budget.
That's the key. And the book gives some really practical strategies for what it calls willpower protection. The first is environmental design.
This is the out of sight, out of mind idea?
It's the smartest, most efficient way to be disciplined. It's about reducing the number of decisions you have to make.
So if I don't want to eat cookies,
Don't have cookies in the house.
it's that simple.
Think about it. If the cookies are on the counter, every time you walk into the kitchen you see them, that's a trigger. Your brain has to actively say no. That costs energy.
One rep.
One rep. But if the cookies aren't there, the thought never even occurs. The decision doesn't have to be made. You've saved all that willpower for something more important.
You're not tougher, you're just smarter.
Exactly. It's lazy discipline.
The book has another very specific example of this under dietary factors.
Yes. The golden rule.
Yeah.
Never go grocery shopping when you're hungry.
It sounds like something your mom would tell you.
But there's real science to it. When you're hungry, your body is in a primal survival state. Your brain is screaming for high-calorie, quick energy.
Sugar, fat, carbs.
All of it.
Mhm.
If you walk into a supermarket in that state, you're pitting your tired, rational brain against millions of years of evolutionary programming.
You're going to lose.
You are going to lose. You'll walk out with chips and ice cream, and your willpower will be even more depleted from the fight.
Speaking of survival states, there's another willpower killer the book talks about that felt huge. Stress.
Stress is the ultimate discipline killer. The text is very clear that when you're under chronic stress, your body is flooded with cortisol. It enters fight-or-flight mode.
And fight-or-flight mode doesn't care about my 5-year plan.
It cares about surviving the next 5 minutes. It makes you impulsive. It makes you seek immediate comfort and reward. Your prefrontal cortex, the home of discipline and long-term planning, gets shoved to the side.
So trying to start a new disciplined habit when you're incredibly stressed is basically setting yourself up for failure.
It's like trying to build a house in the middle of a hurricane. You have to manage the stress first. It's not a luxury. It's a prerequisite for discipline.
So to wrap up Chapter 1, it all comes down to the principle of consistency.
Yes, the author's core definition of discipline is simply making the right choice consistently, regardless of how you feel.
That's the difference between discipline and motivation.
That's everything. Motivation is a feeling. It comes and goes. Discipline is a system. It's a skill you build through consistency, which in turn physically rewires your brain to make the right choices easier over time.
That's a perfect transition then, because it's still hard. Even knowing the biology, it's work. So why bother? What's the payoff?
And that is the entire focus of Chapter 2, the benefits of self-discipline.
He starts with the big picture, right? Success and stability.
A very broad impact. He argues it's a cornerstone of success in almost every area of life. Career, finances, academics, even relationships.
Relationships is an interesting one. How does discipline affect, say, my marriage?
It's all about impulse control. In an argument, your impulse might be to say something cruel or to shut down. Discipline is the skill of pausing that impulse.
So you can respond thoughtfully instead of just reacting.
Exactly. And it's about adhering to commitments, being a reliable, trustworthy partner. Trust is just consistency over time, and discipline is what fuels consistency.
And without it, what are the consequences?
The author doesn't pull any punches. A lack of discipline, he says, leads to stagnation, unhealthy habits, and a deep feeling of worthlessness.
That word worthlessness really lands. It shifts from the external rewards to our internal state.
Which brings us to the psychology of self-worth. This, for me, was a huge insight.
I think most of us have it backwards, right? I always thought if I just had more self-esteem, then I'd be more disciplined.
That's the common belief. But Walter argues the exact opposite is true. Self-esteem doesn't create discipline.
Discipline creates self-esteem.
Precisely. He explains that every time you set a goal for yourself, I'm going to wake up early, and then you fail to do it, you break a promise to yourself.
Ouch.
You learn, on a subconscious level, that you can't rely on yourself. Your word to yourself doesn't mean anything. That's what erodes self-worth.
So every time I hit the snooze button, it's a tiny act of self-betrayal.
But the reverse is also true. Every time you keep that promise, even if it's small, you build self-respect. You're not just getting a task done, you're proving to yourself that you are capable, that you are someone who does what they say they will do.
And that builds real confidence.
Confidence and resilience. The book says disciplined people have higher confidence, but it also changes how they handle criticism.
How so?
If your self-worth is low, criticism feels like a confirmation of your deepest fear. See, I knew I was no good.
Right, it's a personal attack.
But if your self-worth is built on a foundation of your own consistent effort, you can hear criticism differently. You can see it as beta, an opportunity to improve. It's not a threat because you are secure in your own actions.
That's a superpower. It's like emotional armor.
It is. And in the final section of the chapter, he argues it's physical armor too.
The section on risk avoidance and decision-making.
Yes, the protective factors of discipline. The book cites studies showing that people with high self-control are significantly less likely to engage in high-risk behaviors.
What kind of behaviors?
Things like substance abuse, criminal activity, impulsive and unsafe sexual behavior.
It's the marshmallow test all over again, but with much higher stakes.
It's the ultimate one marshmallow now problem. These are behaviors that trade long-term health, safety, and stability for a moment of immediate and often destructive gratification.
So discipline isn't just about achieving goals. It's about protecting yourself from your own worst impulses.
It's about being able to see the future consequences of your present actions and choosing the path that leads to a better life, not just a better moment.
Okay, so to sum up part one, we've looked at discipline not as a feeling or a trait, but as a biological skill. It's a muscle we can train.
A muscle that needs energy and can get fatigued.
Right. And we can protect that energy by designing our environment and managing our stress. And the reason we do all this is that it builds not just success, but self-respect, resilience, and protects us from harm.
That's a perfect summary of the foundation. We understand the what and the why.
But knowing the science is one thing, actually doing it is another. Because our minds have all these little traps and biases that get in the way, even with the best intentions.
And those psychological barriers are the next piece of the puzzle.
That concludes part one of our deep dive into the power of discipline. Join us for part two, where we will explore the mental and psychological barriers that weaken discipline, including the status quo bias and the Dunning-Kruger effect. Okay, so I want you to picture something for a second. It's a bit of a visualization exercise. You are standing at the very, very edge of a high diving board. You're looking down at the water.
Okay, I'm there.
Now, intellectually, you know how to swim. You know the water is deep enough. You know the pool is, I don't know, heated. Biologically, your muscles are perfectly capable of the jump.
Right.
You have every single piece of hardware you need to execute that dive.
But you don't jump.
You don't jump, you just freeze. Your toes are gripping the edge. Your heart starts hammering against your ribs like a trapped bird, and your brain is just screaming one word, no.
And that paralysis, that friction between what you can do and what you actually do.
Yeah.
That is exactly what we're dissecting today.
We are back on the deep dive. And if you were with us for our last session, you know we started something pretty massive. We began cracking open The Power of Discipline by Daniel Walter. And honestly, I think it changed the way I look at my own brain.
It really is a foundational text if you're trying to understand the mechanics of human behavior.
Yeah.
It moves beyond all the fluff and gets right into the wiring.
Exactly. And just to bring everyone up to speed, and I really, really recommend you go back and listen to part one if you missed it, we established the baseline.
Groundwork.
The groundwork, yes.
Yeah.
We talked about what the book calls the biological argument. Basically, the science says, yes, self-discipline is biologically possible. We are not hardwired to be lazy.
No, we're built to adapt.
We busted that myth that you're just born without it.
That's right. We established that the hardware is there, the biological capability to, exert self-control, to delay gratification, and to pursue long-term goals it's inherent in our physiology.
So it's not some superpower.
Not at all.
Yeah.
It's not reserved for some genetic elite. It's a standard feature of the human operating system.
Which is great news, theoretically. But it also leads to the inevitable, really frustrating question that we're tackling today.
Which is,
If the biology is there, why is this so hard? I mean, if I'm built for discipline, why did I hit the snooze button 4 times this morning? Why do we stick to bad habits even when we know they're wrecking us?
that is the pivotal shift we're making today. In part one, we proved it's possible. In this part two, we have to analyze why it so often fails.
We're moving from the biological potential to, the psychological barriers.
Exactly. We're looking at the invisible walls we build for ourselves.
And before we get into the nitty-gritty of the next 2 chapters, which, spoiler alert, are about to call us all out on some very specific behaviors, I do want to set the stage properly. Welcome to Fact Horizon. This is where history meets mystery and facts define the future. We explore the profound truths of human existence, the wonders of the mind, and the secrets of the cosmos, all in one place. If you seek knowledge and wonder, you're in the right spot. Subscribe now and join our journey beyond the horizon.
Beautifully said. And I love that phrase, the wonders of the mind, because the mind truly is a wonder, even when it's actively working against our best interests.
Especially when it's working against us. It's so inventive in how it stops us. So, part 2. We are looking at the internal enemies of discipline.
Hmm.
Specifically, we are diving into Chapter 3, the status quo bias, why we resist change, and then Chapter 4, the Dunning-Kruger effect.
And these two chapters are so critical because they address really the two biggest lies we tell ourselves.
Okay, what are they?
Chapter 3 is about the lie that staying the same is safer, and Chapter 4 is about the lie that I'm already doing great and I don't need to improve.
Woof. Okay, let's start with Chapter 3 then. The status quo bias. Even the name sounds like something that would keep you stuck in a cubicle for 40 years. How does Daniel Walter define this in the book?
He defines the status quo bias as a psychological phenomenon that leads individuals to cling to familiar situations, even when they actively desire a change.
Okay.
And this is the crucial part. Even when the current situation is unfulfilling or, actively detrimental.
That is the part that drives me crazy. We aren't talking about staying in a situation because it's fantastic. It's not about refusing to leave a party because the party is fun.
No.
We're talking about staying in a situation that we know is bad for us just because it's what we know.
Precisely. And Walter emphasizes that this affects everyone. It doesn't matter if you're a high achiever or someone struggling just to get off the couch. This bias is a fundamental hurdle in the human brain.
It's a default setting.
It's a preference for the known over the unknown.
Yeah.
And it doesn't care about the quality of that known.
So why? Why does the brain do that? If I'm unhappy or if I know I'm undisciplined and I want to get better, why does my own brain fight me on making a change? Is it just stubbornness?
Well, it comes down to energy conservation and safety. You have to remember our evolutionary history.
Right, the caveman brain.
The caveman brain.
Right.
It perceives the unknown as a risk, a potential threat. So in the text, Walter breaks this down into a few specific psychological mechanisms that fuel the status quo bias. The first one he mentions is the sunk cost fallacy.
Oh, the sunk cost fallacy. I feel like this is the one that keeps people in bad relationships and bad jobs.
That's exactly the example the book uses. The sunk cost fallacy is defined as remaining in an unsatisfactory circumstance because of your past investments.
An investment isn't just money.
Not at all. It means emotional energy, time, social capital, anything you've already poured into a situation.
It's that feeling of, well, I've already spent 5 years in this career I hate. If I leave now, those 5 years were wasted.
Correct. And that logic is completely flawed, but it feels incredibly real at the moment, doesn't it?
Does.
It prevents necessary change because you're valuing the past expenditure more than you're valuing your future well-being. You're throwing good money or good time after bad.
It's like you're waiting in line for a movie. You've been in line for an hour, and then you find out the movie got terrible reviews.
Yeah.
But you think, I can't leave now. I already waited an hour.
Exactly. Even though staying means you're about to waste another 2 hours watching a bad movie. And in the context of discipline, this shows up as sticking to a routine that isn't working.
Just because you've been doing it for a long time.
Yes, you've invested in being a certain type of person. You're the night owl or the stressed executive, even if that person isn't who you actually want to be.
It's like we are hoarding our past mistakes just because they're ours. I built this pile of rubble, so now I have to live on top of it.
We defend the rubble because we built it.
Yeah.
But there's another layer to this, right? The book then moves on to loss aversion theory.
Yes, and I found this concept fascinating. Can you break down how the book distinguishes this from just regular fear?
Loss aversion theory basically says that the fear of losing something often outweighs the potential benefits of gaining something new.
Okay, that makes sense.
In behavioral economics, the ratio is often cited as being roughly 2 to 1. The pain of losing $100 is twice as intense psychologically as the pleasure of finding $100.
So the brain is wired to play defense, not offense.
Exactly. And this is a hugely powerful driver of the status quo bias. The text makes a really key point that we fear losing something, even if that something is objectively negative or neutral.
Wait, hold on. How can we fear losing something negative? That sounds like a paradox.
It does, but think about stress or a bad habit. For example, if you want to become disciplined about your diet, you have to lose the comfort of eating junk food every night.
Right, the ritual.
The ritual. And even though you gain health, energy, and longevity, the brain hyper-focuses on the loss of that nightly comfort.
That makes so much sense. We aren't looking at the gain, we're looking at the empty space where the habit used to be. It feels like a deficit.
It feels like a punishment. Or think about procrastination. Procrastination often creates this stress cycle. We rush at the last minute, adrenaline spikes, we finish the task just in time.
The thrill of the deadline.
The thrill, yes. If you become disciplined and finish early, you lose that adrenaline rush. You lose the familiar chaos.
So even though the chaos is bad for us, the brain misses it because it knows what to do with chaos. It doesn't know what to do with peace.
Precisely. We are wired to protect what we have, not necessarily to optimize for what we could have. Peace is an unknown commodity. Chaos is a known commodity. The brain almost always chooses the known.
Wow. And there's one more mechanism in this chapter that I found really interesting, the mere exposure effect. This sounds like something out of a marketing textbook.
It is often used in marketing, you're right,
Uh-huh.
but it applies so deeply to habit formation. The mere exposure effect essentially says that the more an individual is exposed to something or engages in a behavior, the more likely they are to accept it and even develop a preference for it.
So just by doing something over and over, even if it's a bad habit, we actually start to like it.
Like, might be too strong a word, but we definitely start to prefer it because it's familiar. It
Yeah.
becomes our default setting. The book explains that this is how bad habits get solidified.
Hmm.
If you procrastinate every single day, procrastination becomes your familiar, comfortable state.
It's like a song on the radio. The first time you hear it, you hate it. But then you hear it 50 times and suddenly you're tapping your foot. Not because it's a good song, but because your brain recognizes the pattern.
That is a perfect analogy. The
Wow.
brain loves pattern recognition. It signals safety. So if your pattern is come home, sit on the couch, do nothing, your brain rewards that pattern with a feeling of rightness.
And trying to do something new.
Trying to work early or go to the gym feels alien and wrong, not because it's inherently difficult, but simply because you haven't been exposed to it enough.
It's the trap of familiarity. The bad habit feels like an old, comfortable sweater, even if it's full of holes and, smells terrible. It's your sweater.
That's a vivid way to put it, but yes.
Yeah.
The brain prefers the known misery to the unknown joy.
Okay, so let's recap the enemies here. We are against the sunk cost fallacy, which is clinging to the past.
Loss aversion, the fear of losing what's familiar.
And the mere exposure effect, just preferring what we know. It feels like the deck is stacked against us. But Daniel Walter doesn't just leave us depressed, right? He offers solutions in Chapter 3.
He does. He provides actionable strategies to override the status quo bias. And override is exactly the right word. You have to manually intervene.
You can't just let it happen.
No. The first strategy he offers is what he calls the thought evaluation exercise.
Walk us through that. Is this just about, thinking positive thoughts?
No, it's much more analytical than that. It's a method of breaking down your decisions logically.
Mm-hmm.
Because the status quo bias is emotional, it's based on fear and comfort. You have to counter it with cold, hard logic.
Okay.
The exercise involves clearly listing the pros and cons of staying the same, the status quo versus the pros and cons of changing.
It sounds simple, but I guess the act of actually writing it down forces you to see the reality of it.
It forces you to objectify the decision. When you keep it all in your head, the fear of change feels huge and vague. But when you write it down, the data speaks for itself. When you see on paper that staying the same has zero long-term benefits and changing has massive potential upside, it becomes much harder for your brain to justify the fear.
You're dragging the monster out from under the bed and realizing it's just a dust bunny.
Exactly. It promotes informed, rational decision-making over that emotional impulse.
Yeah.
It strips the emotion away from the choice.
And there's a specific way he suggests we look at risk, right? I loved this part, reframing risk.
Yes, this is a crucial mindset shift. Usually we associate risk with the action of changing.
Right. It's risky to quit my job, or it's risky to sign up for that marathon. We look at the potential for failure in the new thing.
We think, what if I look stupid, or what if I fail?
Yes.
Right? But Walter argues we need to flip that. We need to look at the emotional risk of not changing.
The risk of regret.
Precisely. The text argues that the potential regret you might feel later in life about missed opportunities is often significantly more painful than the immediate fear of failure when trying something new.
It's the classic rocking chair test. When you're 80 years old sitting in your rocking chair, what are you going to regret more? You won't regret the time you tried and failed. You'll regret the time you didn't even try at all.
That's the core of it. If you project yourself 20 years into the future, the risk of having done nothing is actually the far more dangerous, high-risk option. Staying the same becomes the scariest choice.
That's a powerful perspective shift. It's not, is this scary to do? It's how scary is it to wake up in 10 years and realize, I never did it.
Exactly. And the final piece of the solution in this chapter is a general mindset shift towards self-awareness. You have to actively question your decisions.
Constantly.
Constantly. You have to ask, am I doing this because it's the best choice, or am I doing this simply because it's what I did yesterday?
You have to interrupt the autopilot.
Yes, you cannot overcome the status quo bias if you are asleep at the wheel.
So that covers the fear of change. That covers why we stay on the couch. But there is another barrier, and this one is a bit more, I don't know, insidious. It's not about being afraid. It's about being blind.
And now we're moving to Chapter 4, the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Now, I feel like I see this term on the internet every single day. Usually people use it to call other people stupid. But for the sake of clarity, and to be fair to the book, let's define it exactly as Daniel Walter does. What is the Dunning-Kruger effect?
The book defines it as a phenomenon where individuals are largely unaware of their own incompetence.
Ouch.
It is harsh, but it's a cognitive reality. The core mechanism is that people with low ability at a task often lack the self-awareness to recognize that they have low ability.
So they don't know what they don't know.
They don't know. And as a result, they overestimate their competence. They believe they are doing great, when in reality, they are making persistent mistakes.
And the book mentions specific research from Dunning-Kruger about why this happens. It's not just that they're dumb, it's a specific deficit in how they process information, right?
Correct. It references their research on what they call metacomprehension, metamemory, and metacognition.
Okay, metacognition. That's thinking about your thinking, right? Can you unpack that a bit?
Sure. Metacognition is basically your brain's internal dashboard. It's the mechanism that tells you, I understand this, or I'm confused about that. The research showed that those with low competence, and they specifically looked at areas like humor, logic, and language, they lacked the metacognitive ability to realize they were performing poorly.
Their dashboard is broken.
Their dashboard is broken. It's giving them a false reading.
So to know you're bad at something, you actually have to know a little bit about it. If you know nothing, you might just think you know everything.
That is the great paradox. Competence is what helps you identify incompetence. If you lack that initial competence, you are effectively blind to your own errors. You don't know what good looks like, so you assume your own bad performance is actually good.
Okay, so how does this apply to self-discipline? Because usually we think of Dunning-Kruger in terms of, someone thinking they can fly a plane when they can't. How does it stop me from building habits?
This is where it gets really interesting for anyone trying to improve themselves. The text calls this the discipline trap.
The discipline trap.
Individuals often overestimate their own productivity or their ability to resist temptation. They sincerely believe they have high discipline, when in reality, they do not.
Oh, I am definitely guilty of this. This is the voice in my head that says, I don't need to write a schedule, I'll just remember to do everything.
Yes.
Or I can have just one cookie, I have great self-control.
Exactly. You assume your future self is a superhero. You overestimate your capacity to work, and you overestimate your capacity to say no. And because you are unaware of your actual limitations when it comes to willpower, you set yourself up for failure.
You don't build the necessary systems.
Because you think you're above needing them.
It's a kind of arrogance, but it's an unintentional arrogance. We think structures and rules are for weak people. I'm strong.
And the book contrasts this with true experts, which it calls the paradox of expertise.
Yes, tell us about that, because you'd think experts would be the most confident, maybe even the most arrogant.
Well, the text highlights an inverse relationship. As your expertise in an area deepens, your recognition of how much more there is to learn actually increases.
So the more you know, the more you realize you don't know.
Exactly. A truly disciplined person knows how fragile discipline can be. They know that willpower is a limited resource. So they are actually less confident in their raw, unaided ability and more reliant on their systems.
The novice says, I got this. The expert says, I need to be careful.
Precisely. The expert has the metacognition to see all the potential pitfalls. The novice is blind to them. The expert will lock their phone away when they need to work because they know they might be tempted.
While the novice leaves the phone on the desk thinking, I just won't look at it.
And the novice ends up scrolling for an hour.
Every time.
Every single time.
This distorted self-perception seems like a massive wall to get over. If I think I'm already disciplined, why would I ever try to improve?
That is the absolute crux of the issue. Ignorance prevents growth. If you believe your current level of performance is excellent, you won't take the necessary steps to get better, you just stagnate.
Because you're grading yourself on a curve that doesn't exist.
You're getting an F in discipline, but confidently giving yourself an A.
The book lists some specific ways this leads to self-sabotage. What does Dunning-Kruger look like in action when we're trying to reach a goal?
According to the text, it manifests in three primary ways: making excuses, procrastination, and setting unrealistically high expectations.
Wait a minute, setting high expectations is a bad thing. I thought we were all supposed to shoot for the moon.
When they're unrealistically high, yes. Because of the overconfidence that comes from the Dunning-Kruger effect, you might set a goal to, I don't know, write a novel in a week or lose 20 pounds in a month.
Because I think I'm capable of superhuman feats.
Right. You underestimate the difficulty of the task, and you overestimate your ability to execute it. And when you inevitably fail to meet this impossible standard, you crash. You give up. The overestimation leads directly to a collision with reality.
And procrastination ties into that too, doesn't it? I'm so good at this, I can just do the whole project the night before it's due.
Exactly. I don't need to start now. I'm a fast worker. I work best under pressure. That is the Dunning-Kruger effect whispering in your ear. It's a very comfortable lie.
There's one more obstacle mentioned here that really stood out to me, the fallacy of waiting for perfection.
Yes. This is a very subtle form of excuse-making. The text addresses this idea of waiting for the perfect conditions to start something new.
I'll start my diet when the kids are back in school, I'll start writing when work slows down, I'll start running when I buy the new shoes.
The reality, as Walter points out, is that conditions are rarely, if ever, ideal. Life is messy. Waiting is often just a mask for the fear of starting or an overestimation of how important conditions are versus actual consistent effort.
It kills momentum before you even begin.
Absolutely.
It's another form of thinking we're special. I shouldn't have to struggle through bad conditions. I deserve a perfect, easy path.
And since that perfect path never ever appears, we never move.
Okay, so we have the status quo bias keeping us stuck in the past and the Dunning-Kruger effect giving us a false sense of confidence about the future. How do we break the spell of Dunning-Kruger? How do we get that reality check, as the chapter title suggests?
The solution starts with admitting that your own internal gauge might be broken. You have to seek external data. The text emphasizes very strongly the importance of seeking out constructive criticism.
Which nobody likes to do. It's painful.
No one likes it, but it is essential for growth. External feedback illuminates the blind spots that you literally cannot see on your own because of the Dunning-Kruger effect. You need someone else to look at your work or your habits or your schedule and say, hey, this isn't working. You aren't as productive as you think you are.
So we actually need to invite people to poke holes in our ego? We need to ask for the bad news?
If we want to grow, yes. The text also suggests continuous learning. Specifically, engaging with individuals who already excel in the areas you want to improve in.
So by associating with experts, you get a more realistic benchmark.
It's the small fish in a big pond scenario. Exactly. If you're the only person who runs in your group of friends, you might think you're really fast. But if you join a track club, you quickly realize where you actually stand.
You see what good actually looks like.
Which helps you recalibrate your own self-assessment. And it's not about feeling bad. It's about getting real.
And the book also mentions objective measurement, right?
Numbers.
Numbers. Use objective tools. Take courses with graded assessments. Use apps to track your habits. Don't rely on your feeling of how you did today. Look at the hard data. Did you do the workout? Yes or no? What was your time?
Objective evaluations strip away the bias.
The scale doesn't lie. The stopwatch doesn't care about your feelings. And that honesty is what cures the Dunning-Kruger effect.
It seems like the entire antidote to Dunning-Kruger is just humility. That is the core theme. The necessity of maintaining a balance between confidence and an openness to criticism. You have to be confident enough to start, but humble enough to know you have a lot to learn.
You have to assume you have blind spots.
Always.
This has been a lot to take in, but in a good way. It feels like we're clearing out the cobwebs in the attic.
It's a necessary deconstruction. You can't build a new house on a rotten foundation. You have to see the problems first.
So let's synthesize what we've covered in this deep dive. In part 2, we've looked at why we fail. We've looked at the enemies within. First, we resist change because of the status quo bias.
We're fighting a brain that loves the sunk costs of the past, refusing to let go of bad investments, and fears the loss of the familiar, even when that familiar thing is hurting us.
And then we fail to improve because of the Dunning-Kruger effect.
We're blind to our own incompetence. We overestimate our willpower, which leads to self-sabotage, excuses, and setting these unrealistic expectations that just cause us to crash and burn.
Understanding these two psychological mechanisms is the prerequisite to overcoming them. You can't fight an enemy you can't see.
Exactly. So part one gave us the biological hope, the knowledge that we can be disciplined.
Right?
And part two gave us the psychological warning, the knowledge of why we usually aren't. We now know that we can do it, but we also know why we usually don't.
Which brings us to the perfect setup for the next step in this journey. We've stripped the engine down, found the biological spark plugs, and we've identified all the psychological gunk that's clogging the gears.
So now we need to rebuild.
Now we need to rebuild. We are ready for practical application. We've diagnosed the patient. Now we need the prescription. In part 3 of our deep dive into the power of discipline, we are going to pivot completely to action. We're going to look at how discipline is practically built, how a disciplined life is structured,
And the specific daily habits that Daniel Walter recommends in Chapter 5.
We're moving from the why to the how.
It's going to be the manual you've been waiting for.
You do not want to miss the next one.
So far, we have examined the foundation of discipline and the psychological obstacles that weaken it.
Right.
In this final part, we focus on building discipline and, I think just as importantly, maintaining it over time.
It really is the crucial pivot point, isn't it? We've spent a lot of time discussing the why and the what, the biology, the status quo bias, all the reasons we fail.
All the headwinds.
Exactly.
That's right.
But now we're moving into the how, the actual architecture of a disciplined life.
Exactly. And before we get into the nuts and bolts of daily habits, I do want to properly welcome everyone to this deep dive.
Of course.
Welcome to Fact Horizon. This is where history meets mystery and facts define the future. We explore the profound truths of human existence, the wonders of the mind, and the secrets of the cosmos, all in one place. If you seek knowledge and wonder, you're in the right spot. Subscribe now and join our journey beyond the horizon.
I love that sentiment. It frames what we're doing here perfectly. We aren't just looking at, say, productivity hacks.
No, not at all.
We're looking at the profound truths of human existence, just like the intro says. And self-discipline is, well, it's arguably one of those profound truths. It really is the vehicle for human potential.
It truly is. So just to orient everyone, this is part 3. This is our final part of the series on the power of discipline by Daniel Walter.
The home stretch.
In this section, we'll be discussing Chapter 5, Daily Habits to Improve Self-Discipline, and Chapter 6, Building a Disciplined Life. And we're also going to be pulling in some ideas from Chapter 7, 8, and 9 to really round out the discussion on systems and hurdles.
Great. So let's jump right in. Where does Daniel Walter start when it comes to, the practical day-to-day application of discipline?
He starts with something we all do, or at least I hope we all do, twice a day. He starts with the nature of habits, and he uses the specific example of brushing your teeth.
It's such a deceptively simple analogy, isn't it? But it's so powerful.
It really is.
Walter defines habits as behaviors performed automatically. And this is the key phrase, often without conscious thought.
It's so interesting you highlight that phrase. Because when I think of discipline, or at least how I used to think about it before this book, I thought of pure conscious effort.
The struggle.
The struggle, exactly. The willpower, the constant decision to do the hard thing. But Walter seems to be saying the real goal is to remove the thinking part entirely.
Precisely. That is the great paradox of discipline. The ultimate goal of being highly disciplined is to, stop using discipline so much.
That sounds backwards.
Think about the biology for a second. Your brain is an incredibly energy-expensive organ. It consumes something like 20% of your body's energy, but it's only a tiny fraction of your weight.
Right.
So your brain is constantly, and I mean constantly, looking for ways to conserve that energy. And decision-making, weighing pros and cons, debating whether to go to the gym, negotiating with yourself, that's chemically expensive.
It literally burns fuel.
It burns glucose. It tires you out. We call it decision fatigue. It's a very real phenomenon.
So when I'm standing in the bathroom in the morning, I don't look at my toothbrush and have some big internal crisis about whether I should pick it up.
No.
I don't list the pros, like clean teeth, and the cons.
Yeah.
Like 30 seconds of mild effort. My hand just sort of moves.
Exactly. Your basal ganglia takes over. That's a more, let's say, primitive part of the brain that's responsible for pattern recognition and automatic behaviors.
Okay.
It effectively bypasses the prefrontal cortex, which is your executive center. That's where willpower lives.
The expensive part of the brain.
The very expensive part. So Walter's argument in Chapter 5 is that we need to take the behaviors that lead to our success rating, exercising, saving money, whatever it is, and move them from that expensive prefrontal cortex to the cheap, automatic basal ganglia.
We want them to feel as frictionless as brushing your teeth.
That's the goal.
That sounds like the absolute dream, doesn't it? To just effortlessly do the things that make us successful. But of course, getting there is the hard part.
Course.
That gap between I want to do this and I do this automatically is where pretty much everyone falls off the wagon. And the book makes a really strong, almost confrontational point here. It connects habits to identity. The author writes, your habits reflect your character.
It does feel heavy when you first read it, doesn't it?
It feels a little judgmental. Honestly, if I skip the gym or, I eat a pizza when I'm stressed, does that mean I have a flaw in my actual character? It feels like it raises the stakes to this whole moral level.
I think we need to strip the moral judgment out of the word character for a moment and look at it more like identity or even reputation.
Okay.
Walter explains that consistent behaviors define a person's reputation. And this isn't just with other people, but critically, with yourself.
With yourself.
Think about it this way. If you have a friend who is perpetually late, not once or twice, but every single time for 5 years, how do you start to identify them?
As the late friend. 100%. I stop expecting them to be on time. I might even, tell them to meet me at 7:00 when I actually plan to get there at 7:30.
Exactly. You've built a profile of their character based on their habits. So now turn that same lens inward.
Okay.
If you tell yourself, tomorrow I'm waking up early, and then you hit the snooze button 5 days in a row, you are building a reputation with yourself.
Oof.
You're teaching yourself that your own word doesn't really matter. You're identifying as someone who doesn't follow through.
That hits home. It's like, I can lie to other people, but I can't really lie to that little observer inside my own head. He sees everything.
He sees everything, and that's where the character part comes in. It's about your integrity with yourself. If you consistently overeat under stress, that becomes a part of your self-image.
Right.
You start saying things like, oh, I'm just an emotional eater. You claim it as a noun, a title. And once you accept that title, that habit becomes incredibly difficult to break because you're literally fighting your own identity.
So the challenge isn't just changing what you do, it's changing who you believe you are.
Yes. And the book is clear that changing these deeply rooted habits is, it's challenging, but it's essential. Because if you don't apply conscious effort, the habits just become permanent.
They calcify.
They calcify. You don't just do bad things, you become the person who does them.
Okay, so we need to intervene. We need to apply that expensive brain energy to rewire the system until it becomes cheap and automatic.
That's the work.
So Walter suggests specific daily habits to help us do this. He outlines a few key routines, and the first one is the morning routine. Now, I have to be the skeptic here for a second.
Please do.
Morning routines are the darling of every productivity guru on the planet. We've all heard about the billionaires who wake up at 4 a.m. to take ice baths and journal. It can all feel a bit performative.
I get it.
Does Walter actually offer something substantial here, or is it just another wake up early and hustle speech?
It's a totally valid criticism. The whole 5 a.m. club culture can be overwhelming, especially for people with kids or night shifts or just, different biological chronotypes.
Right.
But Walter isn't necessarily arguing for a specific time on the clock. It's more about a specific state of mind. He argues that the morning routine dictates the productivity of the entire day because it sets the tone. Are you going to be reactive or proactive?
And this is where he brings in the before 8 a.m. rule.
Right. And again, if you wake up at 10 a.m., just make it the before noon rule. The point is about that first block of your day. He suggests performing 2 specific habits before the demands of the world. The emails, the texts can rush in.
Okay, let's look at them. Habit A is meditation or prayer.
Yes.
Okay, let's unpack this one. Because for a book about power and discipline and getting things done, sitting in silence or praying feels passive.
The opposite of doing.
The opposite of doing. If I'm busy, if I'm totally overwhelmed, why should I spend 20 precious minutes doing essentially nothing?
That's the most common misconception about meditation. People think it's about zoning out or just relaxing. But in the context of discipline, it is the exact opposite. It's an intense cognitive workout.
A workout. How?
Walter highlights the benefits we've all heard: stress reduction, improved focus, creativity. But let's look at the actual mechanism. When you sit to meditate, you're trying to focus on one single thing. Let's say it's your breath.
Okay.
Your mind will wander. It's guaranteed. It'll think about emails or what to have for breakfast or some dumb argument you had 5 years ago.
My mind wanders in about 3 seconds.
Flat. Right. And the active discipline, the actual exercise, that moment you catch the wandering thought and gently drag your attention back to the breath.
I see.
That moment, the catch and release, is a rep. It's a bicep curl for your prefrontal cortex. You're actively training your brain to regulate itself. You're practicing the art of focus.
So it's not about having an empty mind.
Not at all. It's about noticing how full your mind is and learning to direct it. Think about it. If you can't control your attention in a quiet room for 10 minutes, how on earth can you expect to control your attention when your phone is buzzing, your boss is yelling, and you haven't had enough sleep?
That's a really helpful reframe. It's not spiritual relaxation, it's attention weightlifting.
Exactly. And the book mentions Oprah Winfrey as a prime example here. Now, Oprah is a billionaire media mogul. Her schedule is tighter than almost anyone's on the planet. She doesn't have free time.
Not a bit.
Yet she prioritizes this. Why? Because she knows that if she enters her day with a scattered brain, her decisions will be scattered. The 20 minutes she invests in the morning pays off tenfold in clarity and efficiency later in the day.
Okay, so habit A is about calibrating the machine.
Yeah.
What about habit B, which is reading?
Yes. And again, this isn't just reading for fun, though that's great too. The context here is specifically educational materials, personal development, something that grows you.
Why is this a part of the discipline protocol? I get why it makes you smarter, but why does it make you more disciplined?
Because it connects directly to motivation and perspective.
Well,
Walter's argument is that to accelerate your success, you must be continuously feeding your mind new information, new strategies. Think of your brain like a computer. If you're trying to run high-performance software like discipline, productivity, complex problem-solving, but you're feeding it junk data,
social media drama,
Yeah.
catastrophic news, mindless entertainment.
the output is going to suffer. It's the classic garbage in, garbage out principle.
Right.
By reading a book on leadership or history or psychology first thing in the morning, you're priming your brain with high-quality ideas. You are expanding your fact horizons, so to speak.
Okay, I see what you did there.
But it's true. Plus, you get the compound effect. If you read just 20 minutes every single morning, that's dozens of books a year. Over 5 years, that puts you in the top percentile of knowledge in your field. It gives you an edge that makes all the hard work easier because you're working smarter, not just harder.
It effectively changes the baseline normal for your brain. If your normal input is high-level thinking, then your normal output starts to match it over time.
That's it, exactly.
Okay, so moving on from the morning, the book discusses a second key routine, organization. This is still in chapter 5. Now, I have to play devil's advocate again here.
Go for it.
I know plenty of brilliant, successful, disciplined people who have messy desks. Einstein's desk was famously a disaster. Is this really a prerequisite for discipline?
That's the classic counter-argument, right? If a cluttered desk is a sign of a cluttered mind, then what does an empty desk signify? This funny quote.
It is.
But we have to look at the averages here, not the outliers like Einstein. For most of us, our external environment acts as a powerful prime for our internal behavior.
Prime.
It sets the stage. Walter discusses how staying organized actively reduces stress and fosters a positive self-image.
Okay, I get the stress reduction part, but how does it foster a positive self-image?
It signals to yourself, I value my time. It signals, I am in control. When you walk into a chaotic room, your cortisol levels, that's the stress hormone, can actually spike. Your brain has to process all that visual noise.
Yeah.
It's draining your battery power, just filtering out the piles of laundry or the stack of unsorted mail.
So cleaning up isn't just about aesthetics. It's about freeing up RAM in your brain.
Correct. Walter points out that organization allows your energy to be spent on goals, not on locating items or managing chaos. If you spend 10 minutes frantically looking for your keys or a specific file,
You're not just losing 10 minutes of time.
you're losing momentum. You're losing the focus you had before you started looking. You're introducing friction into the system. And remember, the whole goal of habit formation is to reduce friction for good behaviors.
Right.
If you want to go to the gym, but you can't find your workout shoes, that little bit of friction might be just high enough for your brain to say, forget it, I'll go tomorrow.
That's a fantastic point. The mess gives you a ready-made excuse to quit.
It gives that status quo bias a foothold to drag you back to the couch.
Now let's go to the other end of the day. Routine 3, the final hour, also known as the bedtime routine. This feels like the one most people, myself included, sacrifice first.
Absolutely.
We stay up late scrolling on our phones or watching just one more episode of a show.
And it is the most dangerous one to sacrifice. Walter really emphasizes that the bedtime routine isn't just about ending the current day. It's about preparing for the next one. Your morning routine actually starts the night before.
What are the specific actions he recommends for this final hour?
The main theme is unwinding, specifically turning off devices. That limiting of screen time is crucial. Avoiding stimulants like caffeine or even intense exercise too late, and creating a cool, dark, comfortable sleep environment.
We hear limit screen time constantly. It's almost become white noise advice at this point. But why is it specifically relevant to the topic of discipline?
It comes down to two things: blue light and dopamine. If you're scrolling through social media or checking work emails at 11:00 p.m., you are blasting your retinas with blue light, which actively suppresses melatonin production,
The sleep hormone.
the sleep hormone. But you're also spiking your dopamine with every swipe, every new email. You are putting your brain into a state of high arousal right the moment it needs to be cooling down for rest.
So you get poor quality sleep even if you're in bed for 8 hours.
You get poor, fragmented sleep. And here is the direct biological link to discipline. Willpower is a function of the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is incredibly sensitive to sleep deprivation.
Okay.
Studies have shown that a sleep-deprived brain looks remarkably similar on a scan to a mildly intoxicated brain. Your impulse control plummets, your emotional regulation fails, your ability to delay gratification goes out the window.
So by staying up late on your phone, you are practically guaranteeing you will fail at your discipline goals tomorrow.
You are hamstringing your future self. It's that simple. These actions unplugging, reading a physical book, just resting, they're not a luxury. They're a critical investment in your productivity for the following day.
So we have these 3 pillars of daily habits: the morning routine for loading the mind, organization for clearing the path, and the final hour for restoring the fuel. That's a great summary of Chapter 5.
It is.
But Chapter 6 zooms out. It stops looking at the clock and starts looking at the calendar, at the long game. It's called Building a Disciplined Life.
This is where we really synthesize the findings from Chapter 6 all the way through 9. We have to move from just specific actions to the broader philosophy. You can have a perfect morning routine and still fail if your underlying mindset is working against you.
And a huge part of that, according to Chapter 6, is mindset and identity. The book has this fantastic phrase: everything starts in the mind.
It uses a gym analogy here, which is very helpful. Just as lifting weights strengthens your muscles, your mental toughness is a muscle that's strengthened through the mind. But before you can strengthen it, you have to stop actively sabotaging it.
And this brings us back to those negative identities, the labels we slap on ourselves. Things like, I'm just not a math person, or I'm terrible with names, or I've always been a bit chubby.
These are so incredibly dangerous. Walter calls them self-fulfilling prophecies, and that's exactly what they are. These beliefs limit your potential and trap you in your bad habits. The brain, again, hates cognitive dissonance.
Wait, break that down. Cognitive dissonance.
It's the mental discomfort you feel when you hold two contradictory beliefs, or when your actions don't match your beliefs. If you hold a core belief that says, I'm a lazy person, but you try to go to the gym,
Your brain feels that conflict.
your brain feels that tension. It says, wait, this doesn't match our data. Our identity file says we are lazy. Why are we running? And subconsciously, your brain will try to resolve that tension by making you quit so that your actions align with your identity again.
That is absolutely terrifying. We sabotage our own success just to be right about a negative opinion we hold about ourselves.
We prefer consistency over happiness. It's a strange but true feature of human psychology.
So what on earth is the solution to that?
The book argues for the necessity of actively and consciously replacing those negative beliefs with positive ones. You literally have to fake it till you make it when it comes to your identity.
How did that work in practice?
You have to start telling yourself, I am a disciplined person, even when you don't feel like it, even when you haven't fully proven it yet. You have to visualize it. You have to speak it. Eventually, when you do go to the gym, your brain says, ah, yes, this action aligns with the new data. We are disciplined people. And the friction starts to disappear.
This leads perfectly into one of the most powerful concepts in modern productivity, which Walter covers in Chapter 9. And that's the distinction between goals and systems.
This is, in my opinion, the single most critical takeaway for long-term success. If you remember one thing from this entire deep dive, let it be this.
Let's start with what he calls the flaw of goals. We are taught from kindergarten to set goals, get an A, win the trophy, get the promotion. Why does Walter say focusing only on goals can actually lead to failure?
He describes what he calls the yo-yo effect. It's that cycle where individuals achieve a specific goal, but then they quickly revert to their old habits because the underlying behaviors never actually changed.
Can we use a real-world example of this?
The most common one is definitely weight loss. Let's say your goal is, I want to lose 20 pounds for my wedding. That's a clear, specific, measurable goal.
Textbook SMART goal.
Exactly. And you might use incredible willpower, you starve yourself, you run every single day, and you hit that number on your wedding day. Success.
Right, hit the goal, so yes.
You hit the goal. But what happens on the honeymoon? What happens a month after the wedding? Almost always, the weight comes right back on.
Why?
Because the motivation was tied to the outcome. Once that outcome was achieved, the motivation completely evaporated. You treated the discipline as a temporary chore, a means to an end, not as a new way of living. You were a person on a diet, not a healthy person.
It's the same with money, right? We
Yeah.
hear about lottery winners going completely broke.
The perfect example, their goal was get $1 million. Well, they got it, but they didn't have the system of a wealthy person, the financial literacy, the investment habits, the spending discipline. So they revert to their old system and lose it all.
So this is where Walter argues for the power of systems. Prioritize the system over the goal.
And he uses that great football coach analogy here, which I think makes it so clear.
Right.
Every single coach in the NFL has the exact same goal: win the Super Bowl. If goals were all that mattered, they would all be winners, but they're not. The winner is almost always the one with the better system.
So what is the system for the coach? It's not the trophy.
No. The system is what they do every Tuesday at 2 p.m. during practice. It's how they recruit players. It's the nutrition plan they give the team. It's their film study schedule. The great coach focuses on the daily practice, the system, rather than just staring at the scoreboard all day.
The old saying, the score takes care of itself.
Exactly. If you run the system correctly, day in and day out, the goal often becomes an inevitable byproduct. Walter's point is that you have to fall in love with the boredom of the daily system, not the glamour of the one-time goal.
And this also leads to the idea of continuous improvement.
It does. A system ensures you never become complacent. If your goal is to run a marathon, you stop running the day after you cross the finish line. But if your system is, I am a runner, you run the marathon, and then you run again on Tuesday, because that's just who you are. There's always room to improve, always another race.
It shifts the entire focus from a temporary win to a lifelong mastery.
Beautifully put, yes.
Okay, but even with the best systems in the world, life is going to throw things at you. This brings us to Chapter 7, where Walter talks about overcoming hurdles. He breaks them down into external and internal hurdles. Let's start with the external one, and he uses this very colorful term, energy vampires.
We've all met them. Maybe we've even been them at times. Walter defines energy vampires as those negative individuals in your life who just drain your motivation.
Right?
These are the people who, when you say you're excited to start a new business, immediately list 10 reasons why the economy is bad and you're probably going to fail.
Or the friends who get kind of offended when you order a salad instead of the pizza.
Yeah.
That classic. Oh, look at you. You're too good for us now.
Exactly that. They're comfortable with your old identity, and your new disciplined identity threatens them. It holds up a mirror to their own choices. So they try to drain your emotional battery to make themselves feel better.
Now, the book's advice is to avoid them. And that sounds great in theory. Just cut negative people out of your life. But what if the energy vampire is your mom or your boss or your spouse? You can't just ghost them.
And that is the critical nuance. You're right. The book advises distance, which is sound advice. But we have to be mindful of the complexity of real human relationships.
So what's the disciplined approach in that situation?
It's all about boundaries. If you can't remove the person from your life, you limit the exposure or you limit the topics of conversation. You simply don't discuss your big dreams with the people who are guaranteed to crush them. You have to protect your mental energy, treat your motivation like it's a tiny candle flame in a hurricane. You have to shield it.
That makes a lot of sense. You don't have to cut them off entirely, but you don't have to let them into the engine room of your mind.
Precisely.
Okay, the second hurdle he mentions in Chapter 7 is one of my favorite concepts to geek out on. Parkinson's Law?
Ah, yes.
Right.
Work expands to fill the time available for its completion.
It was originally coined by Cyril Northcote Parkinson in an essay for The Economist back in 1955, right? He was observing the British civil service.
He was. He noticed that as the British Empire shrank, The number of bureaucrats just kept rising. They were just making up work for each other to seem busy.
And it applies to our personal lives so perfectly. If I give myself an entire week to clean out the garage, it will absolutely take an entire week.
It will take a week. You'll spend Monday thinking about it, Tuesday buying some supplies, Wednesday you'll procrastinate, and then you'll do it all in a panic on Saturday. But if you find out friends are coming over in 3 hours.
I get the garage clean in 3 hours.
Exactly. The task itself didn't change. The complexity didn't change. The only thing that changed was the container you put it in.
So what's the counter strategy that Walter suggests for this?
Setting artificial and aggressive deadlines. You have to aggressively shorten your own timelines. If a project at work is due in a month, tell yourself it's due in 2 weeks.
Isn't that just adding a ton of stress, though?
It's what's called eustress, or good stress. It forces efficiency. It forces you to prioritize what actually matters and ruthlessly cut out the fluff. By setting tight deadlines, you increase your focus and you reduce procrastination because you simply don't have time for it.
It's like gamifying your own productivity.
It is, and it works surprisingly well.
Okay, we're coming into the home stretch here, and we need to address the elephant in the room. We can have habits, we can have systems, we can handle the vampires. But at the end of the day, discipline just feels bad sometimes.
Yeah.
It's hard.
It is.
And this is what Chapter 8 is all about, embracing discomfort.
This really is the emotional core of the book, and it's where Walter is very honest. He doesn't sugarcoat this part at all. He says the very nature of discipline is inherently uncomfortable because it contradicts our natural biological instincts for convenience.
We are wired from birth to seek the path of least resistance.
Absolutely. Biologically, it makes perfect sense. If a caveman saw a chance to eat some high-calorie food with zero effort, he took it, because he might be starving next week. The problem is today we're surrounded by infinite high-calorie food, endless entertainment, and constant comfort. Our ancient instincts are leading us straight off a cliff.
He talks about instant gratification here, the classic chocolate cake example, versus your long-term health goals.
It's the battle of the two selves. You have your present self that wants the dopamine hit. The cake tastes good now. The Netflix show is fun now.
And then you have the future self.
Right. The future self wants to be healthy and successful and financially secure. But the future self isn't here to vote. The present self is the one holding the remote control and the credit card.
So how do we give the future self a fighting chance? How do we let that version of us win?
We have to reframe discomfort. We have to stop seeing it as a warning sign to stop and start seeing it as a signal of growth. Walter argues that we need to develop the skill of discomfort.
Wait, a skill? We usually think of handling pain or discomfort as a trait. You're either born tough or you're not.
And that, I think, is the most hopeful message in the entire book. Discipline is a skill, not a trait. It is nurtured through repeated, small choices to step just outside your comfort zone.
So every time you say no to the cake,
You aren't just saving yourself a few hundred calories. You are doing one more rep in the gym of willpower. You are literally, physically changing the neural pathways in your brain to make it slightly easier to say no the next time.
so if I feel like I have zero discipline right now, I'm not broken, I'm just untrained.
Exactly. You are like a person who has never lifted a weight walking into a gym and complaining that they can't bench press 300 pounds. Of course you can't. You haven't built the muscle yet. So start small. Take a 1-minute cold shower. Wake up just 10 minutes earlier. Don't eat the free cookie in the break room. Build the muscle, rep by rep.
That makes it feel so much more achievable. It's not about being some kind of superhero, it's about progressive overload for your mind. This has been an incredible journey through the power of discipline. We've gone from the biological roots of failure to specific daily habits to these huge, lifelong systems. As we wrap up this entire 3-part series, let's look at the final conclusion. How does the book summarize its own philosophy?
The book really serves as a pragmatic, a very practical guide rooted in real psychological research, but its ultimate conclusion is a complete redefinition of the word discipline itself.
A redefinition. How so?
Well, think about the word discipline. What images does that word conjure up for you?
Punishment. A principal's office.
Yeah.
A drill sergeant screaming in my face. Restriction. Not having any fun.
Right. That's the old, and I would say broken definition. Walter redefines discipline not as force, not as restriction or punishment. He defines it as clarity, structure, and alignment.
Clarity, structure, and alignment. That feels completely different. It feels liberating.
It is. It's the mechanism that converts your conscious, painful effort into automatic, effortless behavior. It's what builds the bridge to get you from where you are today to where you desperately want to be. It's not about locking yourself in a cage.
It's about building a vehicle that can actually get you to your destination.
Yes, so discipline isn't the enemy of freedom, it's the price of it.
In fact, it's the only path to real freedom. The freedom to be the person you actually want to be, rather than just being a slave to your impulses.
That is the perfect place to land.
That is a profound thought. This concludes our series on the power of discipline. Thank you so much for joining us on Fact Horizon.
It's been a real pleasure. Keep building those systems.